first of all, I have to say, I had not read Larry's book, and so I did what any tech person does. I immediately downloaded on Audible and played it at 3.0 speed. And when I met Larry, I thought he was drunk because he was speaking so slowly. But it's a real pleasure to be here, and it's a special pleasure for me, Larry, because I know a few people in this audience, and I was surprised to see Dolvet. Where is Dolvet? He looks like he's put on 1% of body fat since the last time I saw him on video. And then I've got several friends, Tarek Brooks, who's somewhere around here, and Todd McIntyre and others. But it's a real, but the big honor for me is to interview you. And I am not a professional interviewer, so I made notes. You'll certainly get a better interview tomorrow night. But I am so excited to hear what you have to say to some of these really tough questions I'm going to ask you.
Bring them on.
This is going to be brutal. So why don't we start? Let's start really generally. So tell us about growing up in your hometown.
So I grew up in West Philadelphia, born and raised, and when I was really young, neighborhood was decent. Hardworking neighborhood, blue collar. My mom and dad both there, had both parents, 7 brothers and sisters, so big family, 8 of us, in a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. The 1 bathroom was always the issue because there's always a problem getting to use the bathroom when there's that many people living in the house. But it was fun. We it was a lot of love. It was a lot of craziness that went on in the house, but it was good. And then as I got older, and at the time when I was in elementary school, all throughout elementary school, I was straight A student. I was teacher's pet, smartest kid in the class, all that. And but as I kind of got a little bit older, the lure of the street started to kind of pull at me. And I started to look up to the folks that were in the street, the people in the gang.
Larry, before you go there, I want to talk about your grandmother. Okay, so tell us about your grandmother and what she meant to you.
So my grandmother lived with us for a lot of the time when I was younger. And out of all the kids, I was definitely her favorite. Everybody knew it, everybody. They tried to argue sometime, but they all knew I was her favorite. And she just had an amazing influence on me. I mean, we every Sunday, I would walk her to church and sit with her in church. On the weekends, I would walk her, we would go up to 60th Street was where all the shops were. And we'd go up there and I'd help her with all of her bags and stuff. She'd buy me whatever I wanted. We just had an incredible relationship. And she lived with us up until the time that I was about, 12 or so, and then we moved, and then she moved to another location. She moved in with another lady, and I would go visit her as often as I could.
Now, how old were you when she passed away?
I was 12, 13. I was 12, 13.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about who, before the tough part of your life really got rolling. Who were the big influences on your life besides your grandmother?
All my family was, like I said, my family was really close. My uncles, had one uncle in particular, Uncle Roy. He lived with us for a while. Uncle Roy was in the military. He was in the Korean War, and he came back so messed up. He had a 100% disability, and there was nothing physically wrong with him. Yeah. And he would trip out, and it was great. But he treated us great. And the other good thing about my family, they always encouraged me that I could do whatever I wanted to, whatever I put my mind to, I could do. And so I grew up believing that, and I continued to believe that as I got older. I still believe that.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I don't know how many people in this room have read Larry's book yet, but it's one of the things I found really interesting in your book is you always had this confidence. And that's why I asked you about the early part of your life. You always had this confidence that you can just kind of feel it in the way you tell your story. and it had to have started young. So where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, no, like I said, from growing up, family always encouraged me and always made me believe that I could do anything I put my mind to, and that just kind of stuck with me. And even, when I was doing crazy stuff in the streets, I always believed that, I could do anything I put my mind to.
Okay. Yeah, it really shows. Now, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but now let's talk about now the streets of Philadelphia, West Philadelphia hit you. So.
Yeah, no, and like I said, after a while, I started really getting drawn into the street.
Yeah.
I got to a point where it was more important to me to impress people in the street than it was teachers and parents and adults that were trying to steer me in the right direction. I became more interested and more focused on impressing people in the street, and that just led to me becoming a gang member and a street thug, basically.
Yeah, and when you started down that path, are there one or two moments where you say, "Wow, that was like really a turning point for me"? Because you grew up with a nuclear family with two parents who were at home. They both loved you. Your grandmother loved you.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I think it was just the allure of the gang life, and it just attracted me. And I remember there were two friends of mine, two brothers, Butch and Tyrone Mayo. They were like my closest friends, and I remember the three of us decided that we were going to go down and join the gang together.
Yeah.
And we did. We went down. That was when that was when I first really kind of said, "Hey, I'm committing to be a part of this gang now."
I think that, I grew up lower middle class, but I grew up in a very, an area that didn't have drugs, that didn't have that. And I think I also had the allure of bad things, but I didn't have gangs. There were no gangs around me, and there were no drugs around me, not of any substance, and so I was thinking, as I was listening to your book, I was thinking, there's the difference here is just availability. You had availability of this, the worst of my world was so much less than the worst of your world around you.
I don't deny that at all. I mean, I think that's a big part of the issues that we're dealing with in this country today, that people have limited access to limited resources. I think we talked about this earlier a little bit, but the saying that about talent being distributed equally, but opportunity is not. That's absolutely the case.
And when you look back, like up through the let's go into the period when you ended up in the gangs and when you look back in that period, one of the things that really struck me that I loved actually was you actually cite mentors, very positive influences on your life during that period. Can you mention a few of those?
Well, you're talking about from the time I was in jail at 16 up
Absolutely.
till...
From the time you were 15, 16, all the way through.
Well, when I was 16, I was arrested for a gang-related homicide, and I was charged as an adult.
Yeah.
And I ended up being sentenced to 4.5 to 20 years for second-degree murder. And I ended up spending some of that time early on in an adult prison. And I got to be around some of the adults. And the reality is a lot of them were, encouraging you. You need to take this time and go to school, young buck. Yeah. You need to learn while you're here. And then when I got to where I did the majority of my time during that period, it was a place called Camp Hill. They had access to a GED program. You could take classes to get your GED.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I did while I was there, and I don't know how, one of the older guys got me into it, but I had a habit for reading. I could not, if I wasn't at work or asleep or doing something, I was reading, and I didn't care what it was. I read classics, westerns, novels, you name it. And so they came in with the GED program, and they asked, "Hey, you want to take it?" And I was like, and a couple of my guys were like, "No, man, you should take it." So, all right, so I took the GED, and I was in my cell, and the guy who had administered the GED test came down. He said, "Hey, I said, did I pass? He said, well, not only did you pass, he said, but you got one of the highest marks I've seen, and we'd like for you to be the valedictorian of the class. I'm like, come on, man, get out of here. I'm not doing that. But we,
No, they said you got one of the highest scores we've ever seen.
yeah, and he said, we want you to be the valedictorian. I'm like, come on, I'm not. But I talked to a couple of my friends again. They were like, no, man, you should do that. They actually helped me write the speech. And I don't remember the exact speech, but I remember the closing line was, let's not serve time, let's let time serve us.
I love that.
And but that was I was the valedictorian in the penitentiary.
You have a lot. There are a lot of great quotes, amazing quotes in this book. Most of them from you, and a few of them from your mentors, including Bo, the kind of mobster. But you had one quote in there that I really loved, which is maybe you tell a story about selling fish when you were with the Nation of Islam. Tell that story then.
So when I joined the Nation of Islam, I decided that I was going to work for the nation. I was going to do everything focused around the nation, and so I started selling fish. Every day I would go up to the bakery where we'd load up these freezer trucks with 40-pound cases of frozen fish. It was 10-pound slabs, 4 slabs in a case. And so my first day going up there, I get on the truck, and the brother so there were like 4 or 5 people on the truck, and the brother who's driving the truck, this brother named Samuel, he's one of these guys that just talks all the time, right? So Samuel's just talking. We're on our way, and I'm just sitting there in the back of the truck, not saying much, and finally he looks back at me, he said, brother, you're pretty quiet back there. I said, yeah. He said, you got to talk to sell fish, brother. You can't be selling fish without talking. I said, brother, I'm saving my fish for my talk for the customers, all right? And we get there, and we get out of the truck, and I don't know what it was, but every door I knocked on, I sold him a 10-pound slab of fish. It was crazy. He thought I was giving the fish away. They like, this brother's giving the fish away, but I ended up just selling a ton of fish that day, and there was even a guy in the manhole working down in the manhole. It was 85 degrees out. I sold him a 10-pound slab of fish. And then I worked on the fish truck for quite a while after that, and but eventually I got to a point where I felt like I wanted to be able to donate more money to the Nation of Islam. I felt like that was, I was working selling fish and all that, but I wanted to be able to donate more money. And so I got back into criminal activities because that's what I knew in order to get money.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really I found so fascinating was you were always kind of so purpose-driven. You were always looking for an organization to kind of run with, and it's started out as kind of school and your nuclear family, and then you went to the early gang period, then you went to the Nation of Islam. Can you talk a little bit about religion in your life in general, though, because I think that's a super fascinating thing. Because it started with Nation of Islam, which the branch you were with went the wrong way, but it obviously had a big, and then you stayed with it until it went the right way.
Well, I guess I've thought about that over the years, and I think I've always felt like I wanted to be part of something bigger than just me, and I guess I've always kind of sought that. And at one point, probably family satisfied that. And then as I got older, I looked for other ways to be a part of something bigger than myself. And I think the gang kind of satisfied that. And then the Nation of Islam satisfied that. And then the Nation of Islam actually led me to the religion of Islam. And so, now I practice the religion of Islam, but it was really the Nation of Islam that led me to that. And at the time, the nation, what was attractive to me about the Nation of Islam was the whole idea of black people doing for self, and us really kind of coming together and doing for self and not depending on anybody else to give us anything and to take care of us. And so that was really one of the attracting things for me with the Nation of Islam. And then, like I said, that led me to Islam.
Yeah, I mean, I was, I don't know much about Islam. I don't know much about, being a Muslim. I really don't know enough about it, but I was so fascinated because you really did grow up in the meat of the Malcolm X era. you know, and Farrakhan. And I mean, like, one of the things I like about your book is I feel like I'm reliving. You're a little older than me. He looks 10, 20 years younger, but you're a little older than me. So I feel like I was living kind of the Vietnam War era, the Malcolm X period. You know, it's like a really cool thing. So can you talk a little bit about, now let's talk about the period when you were incarcerated. You had two different periods, really.
The last
Can you
time.
talk about those two periods, maybe the first and last, and then what happened to the last one? Because that was like a big turning.
Well, the first one, again, I talked a little bit earlier. That's when I got my GED, was
Yeah.
valedictorian. And, you know, but I got out and kind of fell back into the same thing. I just kind of fell back into, you know, and we were talking a little bit earlier about, you know, what it would take to have people feel like they're doing something worthwhile with their life, as opposed to, you know, making, you know, minimum wage. Ken and I were talking earlier about the fact that we both at one point said, hey, you know, if I could make $1,000 a week or $500 a week, I'd be all right. But who's going to pay me that? You know, you know what I mean? It was that type of mentality.
Yeah.
But so when I got out, I just kind of knocked around, did a bunch of other things, joined the Nation of Islam, and then I ended up back in jail for a number of armed robberies. I was arrested for 5 armed robbery charges. Long story short, I kind of ended up getting sentenced to 4 to 10 years for those crimes. And when I went back in that time, when I got there, I was already thinking, like, you know what, I'm tired of this. I don't want to live this life anymore. And when I got there, I found out that they had a program where you could take college classes inside the jail, and then you could transfer to these trailers that were outside the jail, and you could live in those trailers and leave every day and go to school, and just had to be back by 8 o'clock at night. And when I heard about that, I was like, that's how I want to do my time. I want to do my time being able to leave every day and come back. So that was the incentive for me to get into the program. But once I actually so I took the classes inside, and once I actually got into the program and started to really take classes and listen to people talking about opportunities, slowly I started to really believe that I could change my life. And I think, you know, for people in that situation, that really is the key. It's like you have to really believe that you can change, because if you don't, then you're not gonna come out and pursue the things that are gonna help you to change. If you don't believe that you can do anything different, then you're not gonna try to do anything different. And I think slowly, as I kind of took classes, and like I said, there were a number of people that were helping me out along the way. I ended up, through that program, I got my associate's degree at Montgomery County Community College in Pennsylvania. Got my associate's degree. I ended up getting a car, so I was a driver. I would drive people, and we'd meet up at a certain point and have to be back at the jail by 8 o'clock. And if you missed 8 o'clock, you went back inside. So there were a lot of times we'd be pulling in the driveway at 7:59, 59, and barely make it, but we made it every single time. Got my associate's degree through that program, and then around that time I moved to a halfway house down in North Philly, around the corner from Temple University, and started taking classes at Temple. Actually was able to transfer all of my associate's degree credits and started Temple as a junior. Got my bachelor's degree at Temple. Started working for Campbell Soup Company. Skipping over the Arthur Anderson thing. I know
I'm going to ask you about
that. I know you're going to come back to that. Started working for Campbell Soup Company. Campbell's had a program where if you took a class and passed it, they would reimburse you 100%. So I got my master's degree while I was at Temple University. And you know, the reason I went to school and got my master's wasn't because I loved school or was excited about going to school. But I knew at some point, if I was going to be pursuing a career, at some point, not having an MBA or a CPA would be an obstacle for me. And that would be something that would come up. And And one of the things that as I was kind of moving forward, one of the things I always thought about was, how can I remove any obstacles that are going to be put in front of me, and trying to anticipate what they are and try to remove them. And so to me, I knew I had to get an MBA or a CPA. CPA was kind of out of the question because they asked too many legal questions around that, right? Background questions.
Well, we got to go back there now. So I actually, you and I have a lot in common, as we talked about. We both have an accounting background. We both ended up in kind of product marketing, went into general management, and we have a lot not in common. But tell us about, okay, you've gone through, you've done an amazing job in the GED where you graduated at the top of your class. Valedictorian. Even gave the speech, and then you went on to college. You got your first year associates, then you got your full bachelor's, and you were killing it. You were heavily recruited. You had 7 of the big 8 were recruiting you, and your top choice was Arthur Andersen by far. So you wanted to work for a big public accounting firm. Can you tell that story? What happened?
So back then when I was at Temple in the accounting program, it was basically if you didn't get recruited by a big 8 accounting firm, then you failed, right? So that was the deal. And one of the things that I've always figured or believed in is that the more you practice something, the more confident you become. And to me, the more confident you become, the more chances of you being successful. So when I had no practice at interviewing for companies, I didn't know anything about that. So I decided that early on I was going to take a number of interviews with companies that I knew I didn't want to work for whatever reason. I didn't want to work for those companies, but I wanted the practice of interviewing. I wanted to get the skill set and understand the ins and outs of interviewing. So I took a bunch of interviews with companies I knew I didn't want to work for, and I worked out all the kinks. By the time the companies came on campus that I was interested in, I was killing them. I was knocking them dead because I knew all the right questions to ask. I knew the answers that they were looking for. I had figured it all out. So the accounting firms came on campus, and Arthur Andersen, I interviewed with them. They loved me. Hey, we want you to come out to the office and spend a day interviewing with folks.
Which office was it?
In Philadelphia office, because everything was Philadelphia at this point.
Yeah.
So I go into the office, spend the day there interviewing with a number of people. Great day. But all the time in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, should I say something to these folks about my background? And that question is in my head. And I go through the whole day and I don't say anything. Finally, I get to the last guy who was like the hiring manager. And so I go in his office and I sit down and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna share with this guy. So I start telling him my story and start telling him about, background, going to school, blah. And as I'm talking to him, I could see his face changing. And I'm like, okay, this is not going how I hoped it was gonna go. But I get through my whole spiel and he says, that's an amazing story. And he said, and I'm sure you're going to do great. And he reached in his pocket and he pulled out an envelope and he said, I had an offer letter here all ready to give you, but I can't give it to you now. He said, I can't take the chance that something happens down the line. So, I'm sure you're going to do well. I wish you well, but I can't give you this offer. And at that point, I decided I was not going to share my background anymore. I wasn't going to lie if anybody asked. If there was a question, I wasn't going to lie about it, but I wasn't going to volunteer the information. And to me, that's how the secret was born. And for 40 years, I kept that secret in.
I told Larry this before, and I'm sure if you've read his book already, if you haven't, you will. I think it's one of the most courageous things I've ever heard of, to finish this incredible career, and then there's no reason why you needed to ever tell that story. You could have just not told it.
Yeah, no, one of my best friends was like, hey man, he said, you were planning to take this story to the grave with you. I said, yeah, you're absolutely right, I was. But
so why did you? What happened?
Well, my oldest daughter, she basically convinced me that I should share the story. But another part of it though is one of the things that keeping this inside was doing, it was eating me up inside. I I had incredible migraines. I even had a bout with Bell's palsy at one point, all stress related. I had nightmares. I had recurring nightmare of going back to jail or getting arrested for something that I didn't know what it was. I had these recurring nightmares, and it was just eating me up inside. And all the while, you know, I'm doing my thing and doing my job and keeping my career going. But inside, you know, this secret was eating me up because I was always concerned and always afraid that it would come out. I was always afraid that somebody would tap me on the shoulder and I kept taking these high profile jobs, which, you know, in hindsight, I must have been crazy or something, but I kept taking these high profile jobs that put me in a position where I could get found out. And so that just increased the pressure and increased the anxiety. But you know, my daughter worked on me and convinced me that this was a story that could motivate and inspire some people, that it could maybe give inspiration to some folks who are currently or formerly incarcerated, that it could maybe change people's perception of formerly incarcerated people, and that maybe, you know, it could reach a 16-year-old Larry Miller out there that's about to do something stupid that he would regret for the rest of his life. And, you know, maybe I could reach that person. So she worked on me. It took a long time, though. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because I just, and well, the nightmares and the headaches and all that have stopped once I started sharing with her and getting my story out and letting it out. That anxiety stopped. But I'm still like getting used to everybody knowing my story. You know, it's just, it's just hard because for years, you know, I moved around knowing that nobody really knows. Even, you know, even folks that I worked closely with, Michael Jordan, no idea. Phil Knight, no idea. I mean, people that I worked really, really closely with on a day-to-day basis had no idea about, you know, my story. So, no, it was, and it's still, like I said, it's still kind of challenging for me to know that it's out there like that. But
I mean, Larry, I have to say, I in my life, you know, I've met a lot of people, and you know, I interviewed Magic Johnson not too long ago, and you know, and I had a chance to think about his life, you know, and I was thinking about the time that he when he knew he had HIV, and he was HIV infected, and he quit the NBA, and he was actually about 33. So at the time, that wasn't a crazy age to retire, and he decided to go public, you know. And I thought, wow, that's one of the most courageous things I can think of, and I think you're right there with him. I think what you just did is there was no reason for you to do it, and I'm so glad your daughter and you talked about it. But having read it, I bet there's not a person in this room that doesn't have something from their past that they haven't shared with the people who know them pretty well, and certainly with people who don't know them. And you just opened that up for everybody, you know. So I'll personally thank you on behalf of everybody who buys your book and doesn't.
thank you.
That is a real act of courage. Now I want to change gears a little bit though, and talk about your time at Nike, because there's not a person in this room who doesn't wish they'd worked at Nike. And can you tell us the highlights? And what were the highlights and the lowlights?
No, it's been, Nike's an incredible company. They've been extremely good to me throughout this whole process. I think, you know, what Phil Knight has built there is amazing. And, you know, I'm just thrilled and glad that I was able to be a part of it. I mentioned to Bracken a little earlier, I feel blessed in my life to have the opportunity to, you know, hang out with people like Michael Jordan and Phil Knight and, you know, on down the line. To me, it's like, from where I come from, that ain't even like, you don't even think about something like that. But it's been truly amazing for me. And, you know, to also feel like I've made a contribution, that I didn't just go along for the ride, or nobody pulled me along, or nobody gave me anything. I feel like I made a contribution, and I'm excited and thrilled about that. It was an interesting, fun ride. I see my man Jason Maiden back there. Jay was one of our original Jordan family members, and it was an incredible opportunity to work with, like I said, someone like Michael Jordan and the Phil Knights of the world, Howard Whites of the world, the Jason Maidens of the world.
Dwayne Edwards.
It's Dwayne Edwards of the world. It was an incredible opportunity for me, and like I said, I just feel blessed that I was able to actually contribute to it. And one of the other reasons that I agreed to do this, to share my story and to do this book, was that I feel like, I've been so blessed in my life that if I didn't share this and try to pass some of this on, that I wouldn't be showing how grateful I am for how blessed I've been. So that's also one of the reasons that I decided to do this. But the Nike time has been incredible. The Jordan brand, Bracken asked me earlier, he said, did you really think that when you guys started this, that Jordan could be $5 billion?
Let me rephrase. I'll tell you exactly how I asked it, because first of all, I want to say hi to Jason Maiden, because I'm so glad you're here. That's another book you should buy, by the way. What I said to you was, I said, did you really think that the Jordan brand, after Jordan retired, could continue to be growing even today? And surely not.
I really did, though. That's the reality of it. I really believed it, and I think those of us who were a part of the brand at the time, that was the vision that we had, and we believed in that vision. And we were all focused on executing against that vision, and to see where it is today, it's still, I still have to pinch myself, and it still gives me goosebumps. But I'm not thoroughly surprised by it, because I thought we had the opportunity to build something that would resonate and continue to resonate with people.
It's so impressive, as a person who spent my whole life trying to figure out how to build brands, it's so rare to see a brand become great, and to build a brand around one person, and then to have the vision that it would live beyond the person's career, in the major thing they did. And I believe that you had that vision, because when I talk to other people who, like Jason, other people who worked around you, they all have that same feeling. There seems to just be no doubt about it. So it's so impressive. So maybe we'll talk just a few minutes, and then we'll take audience questions. Just a few minutes about, life after Nike. So first of all, you have more energy, and I cannot believe how old you are. So I won't disclose this publicly, but I'm shocked. But you have so much energy. So you exited Nike and you went right into another big job with Portland.
Yeah, so I was at a game one night. I went to a Trailblazer game, and they have an area where sponsors and all could eat beforehand. And I was up there with a couple friends of mine, and one worked for the Trailblazers at the time, and they had just decided not to renew the contract of their president. So the two of them are like, you should throw your name. I'm like, get out of here. I don't know anything about running an NBA team. No. So the woman who worked for the team, she said, well, at least meet the guy who's doing the hiring for this role. Just have a meeting with. So I meet this guy for a drink, and it turns into like a 4-hour dinner. And by the time the dinner's over, I'm interested and he's interested. So we continue the conversation, and I ended up going to work for the Portland Trailblazers for 5 years. I was the president of the Portland Trailblazers, and usually most teams, the business side is run by a president of business, and then the basketball side is run by a president of basketball, and then they both report to the owner. Well, going into the role, my thinking was I wanted to figure out how to bridge that gap and bring those two closer together. So I negotiated going in that both would report to me. So I was involved in not just the business stuff, but all the trades and drafts and all that as well, which was pretty cool. First draft, we drafted a guy named Greg Oden with the #1 pick in the draft, and we could have taken Kevin Durant, but it was the right call at the time. Yeah. But my last pick was a guy right from this area, which is Damian Lillard, who's from the Bay Area. So I kind of made up for it with Dame. But it was an incredible opportunity. I spent 5 years as the president of Trailblazers, went to all the owners' meetings, was involved in, there was a committee on the owner's side made up of 10 people that negotiated the contract between the owners and the players. And I was the only non-owner that was on that committee. So that was a really interesting experience. So it was great. And I mentioned earlier, David Stern was a great mentor for me. Adam Silver is a great friend to me now. So it was an incredible opportunity working for the Trailblazers. But after 5 years, Nike knocked on the door and said, hey, we'd love for you to come back and run the Jordan brand again. And I couldn't say no and ended up back running the Jordan brand. I was at the Trailblazers from 2007 to 2012. And I came back to Nike to run the Jordan brand. And then 2 years ago, we decided to create an advisory board for the Jordan brand, and I moved into the role of chairman of the advisory board, and we hired somebody else to run the business. So, which is great for me because I get to stay involved, but I'm not responsible for all the day-to-day stuff. Somebody else has that.
Okay, I have. Now I'm going to open it up for questions. I have one last question before we do that. You've been incredibly successful. You know, there's probably there might be one person in this room, there might be more, but not many people who've been through the arc of a life that you have. You've still got a long way to go, but to go from the lowest of lows to the highest of highs. You've gone from prison to really playing with the gods of business and sports.
From the street to the boardroom.
From the street to the boardroom, exactly. What are the 2 or 3 things you'd say, gosh, here are the big things that made me successful? If I really look back, if you want to oversimplify it.
I think we talked a little bit about it before, but the whole attitude of never giving up and just believing in myself. I think, to me, that is the most important thing that somebody can do, is really to have a belief in themselves and believe that you can do what you put your mind to, and just to not give up. I think, as bad as things have been for me, and I've been facing life in prison, all this stuff, and to me, the idea of giving up just never occurred to me. It just, for some reason, I don't know if that's the way I'm wired or what, but it just never occurred to me that I would give up. And it's the same on anything that I do. The other thing I would say is, do the best you can at everything you do. I try to, no matter what it is that I'm doing, I want to be the best at it. I want to give my best at it. And I think, that's always been something that I've focused on as being the best that I can. And then I guess the other thing I would throw out is, I was thinking about earlier today. I was thinking about leadership and what it means to be a leader. And to me, to be a leader means that you really are serving the people that you're leading. You really should be, looking at how can you serve those folks. And I think you should be, the leader to me is someone that provides a vision. But you can have a vision, but if you can't get other people to buy into that vision, it's a pipe dream, really, right? Yeah. And I think, to me, a big part of leadership is, getting people to buy into the vision. And one of the ways to do that is by engaging them in it. And then, to me, my approach has always been, help develop the vision, get people to buy into it, provide them the resources and the direction and the support that they need, and then get out the way and let them do their job. That's always been my approach to leadership, and it's definitely worked for me.
It's clearly worked for you. Larry Miller, you are really an amazing man, and I have already learned more tonight, in addition to listening to most of your book. But I just want to thank you on behalf of everybody here.
Well, I want to say thank you to Andrea for inviting me, and it's been an honor to be here and to share some of my story and insights with you folks. And to me, my hope is that people in this room can affect some of the change that we're talking about. And you know, I'm just here to help however I can. And so if you know, if anybody there's anything they think I can help out with, please reach out to Andrea and we'll connect for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, sir. Really well. Great job. Great job.